And this is a show for children.
Alternate history, at the end of the day, is just a genre of fiction. Liar! The same type of subgenre like steampunk or grimdark. Like any subgenre of science fiction, it's a fancy way of saying, look at that, that's certainly not how things turned out. While alternate history fiction for many years mostly consisted of whatever Harry Turtledove decided to slap together, over the last decade or so, alternate history has left the pages and gone onto the biggest screen of all, streaming services. Since there's been such a revolutionary explosion in alternate history shows lately, as in like 5, I wanted to talk about them, because I wasted a lot of time watching them, and need to have that pay off somehow. Think of this as a recap/review. If you're super interested in watching these shows, there will be a lot of spoilers, so you're warned. Trust me, this is saving you time. Remember how Neil Armstrong landed on the moon and said, "One small step for me, one big hop for thee"? Well, in this Tim Apple TV original, that didn't happen, and instead the Soviets land on the moon first. Oh no! Space! While this doesn't seem like it'd be the most interesting premise, which I thought so too going into it, I have to say this bold take. It was fine. The Soviets land on the moon, and not only does this act as a wake-up call for the US and NASA,
so before we go back to work, it's time to be pissed.
It also leads to the most American thing of all, pointing fingers and passing blame on who blew it. Nixon is furious, and he's going to metaphorically wreck up the place.
The New York Times is going to say that Kennedy started the moon race, Johnson ran it, and then Nixon tripped to the goal line.
Everyone blames NASA for being too cautious. This guy, the main guy, which I'll be calling him because I don't actually remember his name, but you know who he is. He was in the movie Suicide Squad. He played Will Smith. Main guy blames himself and NASA for not landing on the moon a month earlier. There's also subplots with a bunch of other people I don't really care about, so let's move on. The general atmosphere at the start of the season is a fog of failure hanging over everyone's heads, and it spurs NASA to make sure this isn't the end of the space race. Oh no, baby, this ain't the end, it's just the start. Where do you go after the first man? A moon base. Going into this, I kind of expected it involved the US fighting the Soviets on the moon somehow. I don't know why, but the trailer gave it that vibe. The show isn't really about that at all, or even the competition with the Soviets. The main antagonist is just NASA pushing its own limited 1970s technology, and the results go just about how you'd expect, while the Soviets just sort of taunt in the background. A Soviet is not even on screen until near the end of the season, because main guy kidnaps him. But don't worry, that's not a violation of international law at all. They work together. See, they're good. As for the alternate history elements, the Apollo program continues throughout the 70s, creating a base called Jamestown near a crater on the southern half of the moon. As much as this just sounds fascinating, really most of the season is main guy being stranded on the moon because NASA keeps bungling sending more people to relieve him. Now, for some of you, this might pique your interest in summation, but trust me, after 10 hours of content, this was really the most important stuff that occurred. Most of the show is just a melodrama about dealing with being an astronaut, and really could be any other historical space show you've ever saw.
Your brain perceives first a duck, then a rabbit, then a duck again. It always comes back to the duck.
Wait. Alright, hear me out. Fringe is indeed not a pure alternate history show. It's not typical alternate history fiction since it takes place in our world.
Unacceptable!
But let me explain. Fringe was a network show from the mid-2000s created by J.J. Abrams and Alex Kurtzman, who would never go on to make anything horrible ever. Season 1 begins like any typical network cop show you've ever seen 1,000 times, but it has a bit of a twist. The crimes are weird. The main cast is a part of the Fringe division, who investigates Fringe cases.
Clearly, it's brilliant.
It's amazing. Great idea.
All you have to know is it revolves around three main characters. Olivia Dunham, a typical FBI agent who's cold on the outside but shows emotion from time to time. Peter Bishop, who's introduced as this swarmy roguelike who does deals in war zones, which they never really talk about again. And Dr. Walter Bishop, a crazy scientist who is best suited to dealing with these fringe crimes.
This man is dead.
Like mind-reading devices, a futuristic dildo, people's brain melting, man-bear pig. All fun hijinks that more often than not, turns out Walter created back in the 80s.
Oh!
Walter Bishop, the personified essence of the Reagan Doctrine. Fringe is overseen by Lance Reddick. And there's also a bunch of other characters I don't want to get into. There's also these bald guys in fedoras who are basically the G-Man from Half-Life. Nobody really knows where they came from, and throughout the whole series, they basically are just watching. Peter Bishop doesn't really like his father. He's had a weird history with him since Walter always went off to commit his crimes against nature in a lab.
Peter, this is me, your father, Walter Bishop.
Thank you, Walter. I know who you are.
And Walter doesn't really remember any of the things he's done, which is eventually revealed because he took a part of his brain out. He has his cow and licorice and does a lot of LSD.
Love LSD.
So why is this cop show about sci-fi crimes and an acid-dropping scientist even in this video? Get it out of here. Well, we get to the last 2 episodes of Season 1. Olivia starts having visions of an unknown place. She finds out from Walter that she was a part of a program as a child ran by him and his partner, William Bell, to make child super soldiers. Olivia just vanishes, where she goes into an office and meets the long-dead William Bell.
I'm Leonard Nimoy.
But how could this be? The season ends with a pan revealing the World Trade Center.
What? What the frick?
Olivia, through psychic doodadery, transported universes and landed in an alternate timeline where 9/11 didn't destroy the towers. In the span of 1 episode, the entire show goes from a police drama with a thin veil of science fiction to a show where alternate universes exist and psychers too. And it's one that Walter knew very clearly existed this entire time. Because he's been doing some shenanigans, I'll tell you what. This universe is just a hodgepodge of every minor alternate history fun fact. Stuff that wouldn't dramatically change the world, but it adds a nice flavor so you can tell it's different. Walter, indeed, did know that other alternate universes existed. Not only inventing a mirror that can view into the other world, but eventually a portal that can travel to it. Now, why would he travel to a different world? Because in our world, his son died when he was a kid. The Peter, us the audience know, is actually from the alternate universe we just learned existed. Because Walter created a portal to kidnap the alternate Peter and bring him back to our timeline, so that he could be cured of his disease, all without Peter even knowing about it. And by doing this one act, Walter has tore a hole in the fabric of the multiverse itself. Peter merely existing in our universe has horrific ramifications that soon start ripping apart reality itself. People, out of the blue, phase in and out of existence, into objects, into each other, or just entire buildings disappear. It's like the server of the universe constantly is lagging. This quirky science man accidentally caused the universe to begin destroying itself.
Project Singing Corpses.
2, 3, 4. Who can take a sunrise? Who can take a sunrise?
And the other universe knows this full well, as they've been dealing with these cosmic rifts for years. And there's alternate timeline versions of everyone. Olivia has red hair in this universe, and the whole division is much more militant. Walter never went crazy and remained the stoic scientist he was in the 80s. He knows the other Walter kidnapped his son, and now the show has become a battle between timelines. Oh boy. The gang travels into the alternate universe and fun occurs. And when they escape, the other Olivia, called Faux-Livia, that's actually what everyone calls her, sneaks into our timeline in disguise.
I want you to snoop around the other universe and find out how evil they are.
Come out of your universe with your hands up!
As the real Olivia is stuck in the other timeline. Eventually, it gets so bad that they use this ancient futuristic machine. Don't ask. Well, Peter uses the machine, and it turns out it fixes everything by destroying Peter. Yippee. The multiverse is brought back into balance, and the machine even creates a gateway between the universes underneath the Statue of Liberty. Everyone forgets Peter ever existed, and he's gone forever. Or is he? Oh yeah, also Peter accidentally had a baby with faux Livia, thinking it was our Livia. And with him not existing, that baby is just aborted by the universe itself. He never exists, and nobody ever talks about it again. Peter is a ghost phantom thing, nobody knows he existed, and the only memories Walter has of his son is accidentally killing him 20 years ago when he tried to cross a lake and failed. But don't worry about it, he comes back eventually. Season 4 is just a joy. It consists of William Bell, who died in the alternate universe. I forgot to mention that. He continues to exist in between universes as a ghost, in literally a bell. He wants to use Olivia's psychic powers to destroy all of reality, so he can create a new reality, populating it with fun little animals and without those pesky humans, on an actual ark floating in the middle of the ocean. But then that gets foiled by just shooting Olivia in the head. Don't worry, she heals herself. I forgot how she could do that. Season 5 just goes full anime time skip. Takes place in the 2030s, where the Earth has been conquered by the G-Men, who are revealed to be future humans who destroyed their world so much they invaded the past to, I guess, do the same exact thing. Or undo a coup, take your pick. They're futuristic, they don't have emotion, they're all bald. That's your backstory. You've seen this before. It turns out, after the events of the previous 4 seasons, Peter and Olivia, the real Olivia, had a child, and everyone was happy. And then they had their lives absolutely destroyed, forcing the Fringe team to amber themselves, awaiting to be unfrozen to finish the fight. Season 5 becomes an entirely different show where there are no more random crimes, but instead it's a resistance plot against bald people. Peter and Olivia's daughter is killed, so he goes on a rampage using a futuristic mind chip he ripped out of a guy's skull. By the end, Walter goes into the future to save humanity using this bald kid who will somehow change the future and prevent the Watchers from ever becoming a thing. Yeah, the show ends with a reset, going back to 2015, and as all they know, he just disappeared, and nobody will ever know what happened to him. So I know this sounds stupid on paper, but I would not expect a show that took such a detour in its final season.
I'll see you in Spain, lads.
To have such an emotional kick in the gut. Our boy Walter finally gets to redeem himself by pulling the ultimate sacrifice. So yeah, Fringe is a network cop show that ends in at least 3 alternate universes being created, future bald humans invading, and an ending that wrapped up emotionally better than any modern show today.
Wouldn't have packed a bottle of raw milk.
Yeah, I said it. Wow, those certainly are some alternate history shows, but you know what would be an interesting show? One where everyone lived in a timeline where their information may be at threat online. Well, guess what? We do already.
We get it. You're going to say
NordVPN, this video's sponsor. With Nord, you can protect yourself.
Smooth transition.
Thanks, buddy! NordVPN is handy, not just for protecting yourself online, but maybe you just don't like the options your local country gives you on streaming sites. By using this link in the description, nordvpn.com/althist, and use the code ALTHIST, you can get 68% off a 2-year plan. Plus, viewers can use this code to get 1 extra month of NordVPN for free. Not to mention their 30-day money-back guarantee. Pick from their thousands of servers in 60+ countries to remain sneaky on the internet. It's quick, simple, and an easy preventative measure from those kids calling in the SWAT teams. Just go to nordvpn.com/althist and prevent the dystopia that is our modern world from creeping inside.
Get back to the video.
I only watched this because if I didn't, people would be asking about it. This is based on a 2004 novel which has one main change. Charles Lindbergh wins the presidency in 1940 against FDR. This is actually a very short series, only 6 episodes, so I'm going to give it a very unfunny recommendation. Let's talk about the stupid Nazi show. I'm gonna be honest, the only reason this isn't a full video is because if I had this be the main topic, YouTube would probably demonetize me. Boy in the Tall Tower is one of the main books people think about when they think of alternate history as a genre. The Axis powers won World War II. Germany and Japan split the world amongst themselves. Italy got a free coupon to Papa John's, I don't know. And North America has been divided between the Reich in the east and Japan in the west, with the Rockies providing a neutral zone. Being one of the most popular alternate history novels, it's not a shock that it got a show on Amazon Prime starting in 2015. And I will admit something, up until last week, I did not see this show ever. I just wasn't interested, and even though I saw the pilot at Comic-Con all those years ago,
they didn't give much detail on the events of Season 1, but it sounds like Season 2 is a real possibility.
I didn't feel like paying for Amazon Prime. And then I did, and I still didn't like it. The plot revolves around Juliana Crane getting past a banned piece of propaganda by her resistance member sister. In the book, it's a book, but in the show, it's a film reel showing a reality where the Axis powers lost World War II. Now, I know people have problems with the realism of the scenario, but Germany and Japan couldn't have won the war, and they certainly didn't have the resources for that. And that's true, but since this is based off a Philip K. Dick novel from the 1960s...
Sounds like someone breaking in!
This isn't really about realism. It's just about, hey, cool setting, wee. So the gripes I'm going to have about this show has nothing to do with the historical accuracy of whether this premise could have happened, because no, of course it couldn't have. My gripes come down to one thing. How do you have a high-budget show about a Nazi America and Japanese West Coast and somehow make it so damn boring? My entire career is based on the subgenre of alternate history, and yet I struggled to get through this show. Even season 1 and 2, the ones people say are the good part. Don't get me wrong, there are interesting elements, but they are strung together by scenes where nothing happens outside of talking. And that talking is about doing something that 5 episodes later, they sort of do. This is every season of the show. 90% talking about a plot, 10% something happens. People have described this show as a slow burn, but it's not. It's someone forgot to put another log on the fire, the flame was snuffed out, and another match has to get lit to get the fire going again. Repeat this for 4 seasons. So first off, what are the positives? I like how Berlin looks. There is a nice nod to Atlantropa in Season 2. They paid me to go see the pilot. I don't think I've actively disliked a character in recent memory more than Juliana Crane. An average woman who is given a film by her sister who tells her to go into the neutral zone to deliver it before that sister's gunned down by the Japanese. Juliana watches the film and just knows she has to do something. So she buggers off to Carson City, leaving her boyfriend Frank to deal with the secret police himself. Sorry, Frank. Hope nothing bad happens to your family that the Japanese kidnapped to get information that you don't have. She meets up with this nice guy, Joe.
Heil Hitler.
Whoops, turns out at the end of the episode, he was a Nazi all along. If you've seen the first episode, you know Juliana's character. She constantly makes brash decisions that turn out to ruin the lives of everyone she comes into contact with. Then after doing so, has the miraculous power of failing upwards because she is temporarily valuable to people in charge. Someone on Twitter said she was a Mary Sue, and I would have to disagree. Mary Sues are actually good at something, and people unrealistically like them for no reason.
You gotta deal with it!
Juliana sucks at everything, and is hated by not only the Nazis and the Japanese, but even the resistance people she's supposed to be helping out. Okay, rant about Juul Vape over. Season 1 is pretty in line with the book in the broad sense. It focuses on a few key characters: Juliana, Joe the Nazi, Frank, Tagomi the Trade Minister, and Chief Inspector Keto, and on the Nazi side, Gruppenführer John Smith. Season 1 is probably the most simplistic story-wise, focusing on Juliana trying to give the film to the Resistance. Everything else is characters reacting to the existence of the film and how to get it. For the most powerful characters, their main goal is a balance between dealing with the Resistance or the growing tension between the Germans and Japanese. Hitler is sick, and for some reason he's the only one keeping the peace and keeping Germany from going to war.
Why you have to be mad?
This deal of convenience he made with Japan has just stuck for 20 years, despite the fact that Germany has overwhelming military and nuclear advantage. But yeah, the book and show have this problem of making Hitler unintentionally a good guy. That's all I'm going to do dissecting history. I just thought it was stupid in the book, had to get it out there. Tagomi, the trade minister, works with a German agent to smuggle nuclear secrets to Japan so they can gain the bomb, and at least Germany won't be so avid to go into war. But while they're trying to do this, the Japanese prince gets shot by a camper. Keto tries to find out who shot the Japanese prince, who turns out to be the Germans because they wanted to provoke a war. There's this stereotypical Nazi bad guy.
I have achieved much under the leadership of the Führer, John.
We are Nazis?
Who tries to use the German agent to kill Hitler and John Smith, but fails at both. John Smith is further promoted by a grateful Hitler. While Juliana and Joe run from this guy, a Nazi bounty hunter who I just can't take seriously at all.
You're flooding it!
In the end, they hand the film over to the Resistance, who just tells them to go away. By the end of the season, Juliana and Frank reunite. They discover through another film that Joe, what a shock, is actually a Nazi.
Severed lambs and stuff, and oh shit. Oh, don't look at that one. Don't look at that one. Don't look at that one.
Juliana is tasked with luring Joe into a trap to get him killed, but at the last second, she sends him on a boat on his way, just betraying the Resistance.
Go away! We're having a good time until you showed up, cheapers!
Everyone is completely perplexed by this, as I was, but Juliana just knows she did the right thing because people can change. In no way will that be a terribly stupid mistake. Tagomi uses meditation to transportate to an alternate timeline. Our timeline. One where America still exists, and it's the Cuban Missile Crisis. Wait, what? Yeah, so the show just kinda has this happen, just like another show that I previously talked about. Suddenly established that the multiverse exists and people can travel between them. Anyway, season 2. Juliana meets the man in the high castle. There he is. Ain't he beautiful? I actually do like him. He's just a guy that made a fake alternate history fan film if the Axis lost the war, and people just started sending him real films from another timeline. Wait, is he? Oh no. Anyway, of course the Resistance isn't going to tolerate Juliana just sending Joe on his way, so they tranquilize her, put her in a trunk, and whee! This causes some commotion, leading to a Resistance member dying. So what does she do? Well, she flees to the Reich, of course, to find Joe, and also another guy who she saw in a picture. In reality, I know she's trying to prevent San Francisco from being nuked because she saw it in a film, but still, this is the main face of the show, and she just keeps ruining people's lives. The rest of her story in Season 2 is in the American Reich, where she's taken in by John Smith, meets his family, and he could kill her at any time, but he just wants to see what she'll do. We focus much more on the home life of John Smith, his wife, 2 daughters, and older son, who's just an American good old boy, as in a brainwashed fanatic.
The Führer? Very good. Justice is a divine right, guaranteed for all and determined by the Führer.
He wants to serve the Reich to the best of his abilities. Uh-oh, kiddo. Turns out he has a disease that can't be treated, and by Nazi ideology, he'll have to be gassed. This, of course, won't do for John Smith and his wife, so they do everything in their power to make sure nobody finds out. But the kid finds out and intentionally turns himself in to get gassed anyway. Okay, in the show, it's meant to be the sad moment. I know this is terrible, but I was kind of laughing.
It's funny because I don't know him.
As for everyone else, Tagomi figured out how to stay long periods of time in our world. Frank does really nothing. The main plot revolves around Hitler dying and Germany blames it on Japan, preparing for war, but Tagomi in the last second transports back with some film of test bombings in our timeline. And John Smith in the nick of time uses it to convince Himmler that the Japanese have the bomb and it's not worth going to war. Oh yeah, Joe was there too. He had a subplot in Berlin where he met his long-lost dad, who turned out to be a high-ranking Nazi, but is then thrown in prison because it turns out he was the one who poisoned Hitler, and Joe is thrown in for good measure. Joe is forgiven at the beginning of Season 3 by Himmler and has to prove his loyalty by shooting his father right in the head. He's sent to San Francisco with a new mission: kill Nazi suspected traitors, or whatever we tell you to, which he does very willingly. Real winner you save there, Juliana. John Smith is now whatever that is, and for his loyalty, he has been placed in charge of all Nazi North America. By this point, my eyes are glazing over because nothing is really happening. Apparently, a lot of people can travel between universes, and they call themselves travelers. It becomes the main focus of the show. The Nazis blow up the Statue of Liberty because they want America to start at year 0. Juliana talks with Tagomi and learns that in the other universe, he is her father-in-law. Joe tries to assassinate him. Juliana tries to give him one more chance. What a shock. He was a Nazi bad guy all along. It only took 3 seasons. The Nazis build a portal to the other universe and Juliana transports herself there. Alright, cool. Let's finish this. There's a machine that can travel to other universes. There's different versions of the other characters on the other side. John Smith in our timeline is an insurance salesman who took in Juliana after she crossed over. She's friends with his alternate family. Smith travels to our universe after their John Smith is killed by Nazi agents that he sent over to kill Juliana. Alright, it's just Fringe with Nazis. That's all Season 4 is. There's a machine, alternate people fight each other. What else could there be? No. Walter, come back. There's a coup in the Reich. And the new Fuhrer allows Nazi America its own independence as John Smith becomes the ruler of it all. Even with absolute independence, Smith still wants to invade the States to reunite America since the Japanese pulled out of the West Coast. Apparently all it took was some bombings, and they just leave. John Smith, by the end of the season, reveals his greatest plan of all: to kidnap his son, who died in his universe, and bring him back so he can survive. He just wants to pull a Walter. Like, what is happening? Did this copy Fringe? Okay, what else happens? Frank died at the end of Season 3, forgot to say. That's how little I cared. Then the rebels blow up the track that John Smith was on, and he kills himself.
It's been one of those days.
The Nazi portal is permanently opened by the rebels, and the multiverse can be used by everyone forever. Literally the end of Fringe Season 3. My brain's melting. So, in summary, which shows do I think is the best? Well, here's a quick rundown. In case you're still here, it's a long video. In 4th place, it's Man in the High Castle. It ran on too long, and probably 75% of the plot didn't matter. The plot, setting, and characters were wasted just as much as my time. In 3rd, it's For All Mankind. It suffers from the same problems as High Castle, but the smaller cast and better relationships really make you care more about their problems. You kind of forget you're watching an alternate timeline, and more a really messed up historical retelling. 2nd is the plot to destroy America. It does alternate history right, where it doesn't need to focus on a large cast. Instead, it just shows the perspective of one family dealing with the fallout of a changing America. And number 1, it's Fringe. While the show goes absolutely bonkers, it knows what it is. You know what it is.
She tricked my son with her carnal manipulations, and he fell right into her agenda.
Agenda?
And the development of each character's arc is incredibly satisfying. For a network show from 10 years ago, it took what could have been a standard cop show with sci-fi elements and twisted it into a multiverse-spanning plot. Somehow the show actually drains you after watching, even if the events are pretty far out there. I know this probably isn't every single alternate history-ish series that has ever existed. There's a ton of older shows that touch on alternate history like Sliders or Quantum Leap, but perhaps that's a later video. Who knows what the future of alternate history on TV will bring? Perhaps we'll see new and bright creators bringing their own visions to the small screen. No, I'm not talking about you two.